Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you folks, I have a brand new Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory video. I'm going to be taking some time discussing a campaign that I've been kicking around in my head. I got actually quite a few of these campaigns that I kicked around in my head until essentially I settled on the one I settled on. But I also kind of want to put these videos out there to maybe give you some inspiration. Also, maybe to kind of come back to them, if you will, down the road for various other campaigns for myself. But let's dive into it. And I want to talk about the inspirations for this first. The first one is actually kind of like this little indie game that I've played. That's for Warhammer 40k. You can actually get on Steam for PC. It's actually, I think it's on every system. And it's called Dakka Squadron. And essentially, the idea is you're an Ork Fly Boy flying around shooting stuff, mostly other orcs, actually, which is why I'm actually taking a little snippet or concept, if you will, from Dakka Squadron. Another bit of inspiration for this video, too, was a graphic novel I have called Deff Skwadron. And actually, it essentially follows Ork Fly Boyz fighting the Imperium in their fighters. And actually, what's really cool is even though the art's black and white, the art's actually really well done, and the story itself is a fun read. So if you've never heard of it, never checked it out, I definitely recommend it. And the other cool thing about it is it's actually got a page in there showing an Ork Flyboy cockpit from a fighter bomber. So I thought that was actually really cool in the book itself. And it tells you all the different parts, but it tells you in kind of like orc terms, if you will. So that's kind of what makes it more interesting. And then finally, the biggest influence for this was actually a show I grew up watching as a kid with my dad called Black Sheep. And essentially, it was a show that was actually loosely based on the real Black Sheep Squadron of World War II. For those who aren't familiar with the Black Sheep Squadron, it's actually a squadron of Marine Corps pilots that flew Corsairs against the Japanese during World War II. And the commanding officer was Major Boynton, also known as Pappy Boynton. Now, when I say the show is loosely based on the real Black Sheep Squadron, yeah, I mean that kind of loose, but we'll move on. But so anyway, the idea for the campaign is basically the players are playing out as a squadron of orcs. Basically, for me, the idea was a squadron of orcs working for a war boss. So the war boss is kind of the one calling the shots, even though the orcs themselves has their own nob that's actually given the orders. And essentially, for me, my plan was to actually set it on Gorka Morka, which I've actually discussed in a previous video. So you might want to check that out too if you're interested in learning more about Gorka Morka and the world of Gorka Morka, the setting, if you will. But just to make it really quick here, basically, you have a world that is dominated by orcs. There's really no humans in sight except for the diggers, but we don't have to worry about the diggers for this one. But essentially, you would have multiple orc tribes, and essentially the war would start off as orc versus orc type combat, which is why I'm taking a little snippet from Dakka Squadron. Have to kind of give credit where credit's due, don't I? But then my concept goes a little bit further, as with Gorka Morka, when I discussed the video for Gorka Morka and doing that as a campaign setting, I said about the Imperium showing up and actually essentially launching a crusade onto the planet. Well, same idea. The Imperium shows up, they launch a crusade onto the planet, and essentially the Ork Fly Boyz that the players are playing as is actually fighting the Imperium. And essentially, that's where pretty much all the various orc tribes band together under one war boss and decide to kick their teeth in. Now, when it comes to missions, I think we can take a lot of inspiration here from Ace Combat and other various sources. But I'm going to actually go over various different things, various different types of missions that your players would be playing out as part of the campaign. Now, the first thing, though, to point out, though, with this type of campaign is the orcs would be trying as quickly as they can to essentially establish air superiority. Now, in the case of the Imperium, they're going to be doing the same thing. So basically, it's going to be two air forces colliding into one another, and that's going to continue going until, well, one dominates the other. Now, there's going to be a lot of dogfighting, and that's probably going to be one of the primary things, is where your Ork pilots, your Fly Boys, if you will, are going to be flying out, flying patrols, and they're going to be encountering various different obstacles, and one said obstacle might be other Imperial fighters. Thus, dogfighting is definitely going to be a hallmark of the campaign. Now, when it comes to dogfighting, another thing that your Ork pilots might be doing is intercepting enemy bombers, because bombers were definitely going to be another threat to the Orks and the Ork lines itself. They may be also trying to intercept troops and supplies coming from outer space or coming from orbit to ground side. So that's another thing that your Ork Fly Boys will be doing, is trying to intercept anything trying to reach the surface of the planet, essentially trying to land, trying to set up beachheads, if you will. Now, once the Imperium has actually set up their essentially established a beachhead, one thing that the Imperium is going to do, especially as they can establish and secure land, is probably set up airfields on planet side. So that's actually one thing that your Ork Fly Boys may be doing, is attacking airfields, attacking air bases. Heck, just attacking bases in general. Of course, they will launch attacks against armored convoys, supply convoys, any communications networks, essentially any type of infrastructure related to the enemy forces. They're going to try to attack. And this is where basically Ork fighter bombers are definitely going to become kind of like a mainstay, if you will. This is where they're going to shine. Another thing that your Fly Boys may also do as part of a mission is actually destroy artillery sites for any Ork assaults, or in other cases, maybe just to prevent your Orks from the Ork clans that they're part of from being attacked by enemy artillery. Of course, there's also the possibility of anti-air, and yes, they're going to launch attacks against anti-air sites as well, especially when it comes to the point where the Orks are using heavy bombers and other type of bombers. And actually, besides the heavy bombers, that's another thing your Ork players should experience at some point or another during the campaign, is flying as a bomber escort. And then finally, the last one I would point out is close air support for ground forces, obviously. So basically, pretty much anything that you really can think of that modern planes would do, basically anything from like World War II on, anything that they would do, yeah, your Ork player should be doing as well. Now, when it comes to the aircraft themselves, the two hallmarks for my idea was using either the Dakka jet or the Blitzer bomber. Of course, back in my day, we would just call this a fighter bomber, but whatever, they changed the name of it. And both of those can be found within Church of Steel. And that's the next thing I want to get into, is discussing supplements. I would say for this type of campaign, a requirement for Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory as a supplement is Church of Steel. That's going to probably be one of your primary sources you're going to use for this type of campaign, because that's going to have your Ork aircraft, but that's also going to have some enemy aircraft and enemy vehicles, etc. Another one too is AOA, because AOA actually has other aircraft, like the Marauder bomber is actually in AOA, as well as like the Thunderhawk gunship, and there's some other aircraft that's in AOA, which you can actually download this from the Doctors of Doom website for free. The next one, and I really don't mean to be like kind of, I don't know how I want to put this. I don't mean to be placing a chip on my shoulder, but I think would be a good supplement for this campaign would be my technical field manuals. I currently have 3 of them at the time of recording of this video. I think all 3 of them would be excellent for this type of campaign, based on what type of enemies you want to use, etc. And besides the fact that actually Technical Field Manual Volume 1 has an Ork heavy bomber. So that might be something you want to check out if you want to use heavy bombers in your campaign. And once again, you can actually download this for completely free from the Doctors of Doom website. Anyway, folks, I think I'm going to wrap it up at that. Hopefully that gives you all some inspiration, some ideas that you could use for your own Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory campaign. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and have yourselves a wonderful day.
Now it's dragging.
Your tail's always dragging, TJ.
Hey, Boyton!
What do you want, Tommy?
Just want to wish you guys